friends. I'm Karen, and this is the Family Food for Moms podcast. We're talking about inspiration for family cooking and dining. Last week in the Chef's series, we spoke about how to season your food amazingly using spices and herbs, using acid, citrus, any other flavors that you can add to make it delicious. So today I thought we could do a spices and herbs guide, a guide to what herbs and spices are good and are best to have in your kitchen and what to do with them, and then which ones to use on which proteins or vegetables or whatever else you're cooking. So it's obviously a big subject. I'm just going to touch briefly on it, but hopefully this will help you to know as a basic guide or as a learning cook what you can use. As far as herbs go, it's really lovely to have fresh herbs in your kitchen. If you have a kitchen with space and where you can sustain the herbs, or on a balcony or patio, you could have some herb plants, or just outside your kitchen door is a good space to grow plants. And those are always going to taste better than dried. But dried are good too when sometimes you're in a hurry or that particular plant is not growing or whatever it might be. It's great to have the dried ones too. We've got a large rosemary bush, but that's about all right now. I think thyme's quite easy to grow. And basil, we've done at times. That one's a little temperamental. It does better in the summer, but not too much sun. And then it can easily go to seed if you don't keep trimming it. So also you can often get a small plant from the grocery store, like basil or thyme, and keep that in your kitchen. Then spices, you can buy the whole spices, like you can buy a piece of ginger or a piece of turmeric sometimes, or you can use the dried spices. As I said in the previous episode about seasoning, it's good to toast your spices a little bit before using them. And then I also talked about when it's best to use dried herbs versus fresh herbs when in the cooking process. Dried herbs near the beginning, fresh herbs you can use at the end. So let's get into a guide to spices and herbs in your kitchen and what to use them for. So firstly, here are 4 core spices. Spices that you're going to use almost daily in your cooking. So those would be black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika. You also get smoked paprika, which has a deeper, smokier flavor, and they're both amazing. So black pepper, that's going to be good on most dishes. You need to be careful sometimes, like if you're cooking chicken breasts in the oven and you crack some black pepper on top, then sometimes people can get a big piece of pepper in their mouths, and that's not pleasant. But if you add a little bit evenly, that works great. So it's going to add heat and it's going to add depth to almost any savory dish that you're doing. If you're going to be browning a leg of lamb to use in the crock pot, add some pepper. If you're going to be cooking a fillet steak, add some pepper with your salt, obviously. Pepper doesn't generally burn, I find, so you can add it before cooking, before browning. But obviously everything can be added before being put in the crock pot or the oven. And often it helps to add it a little bit in advance so it's got time to infuse with flavor, like if it's a big piece of meat. Then garlic powder. I don't use this as much. I tend to use fresh garlic, but it's always helpful to have the dried garlic powder in your pantry. And again, you can sprinkle this lightly on meat, in marinades and sauces. It doesn't work as well, I don't think, on vegetables. It's best to mix those with fresh garlic, but it's great for meat. So if you're doing a roast chicken or a leg of lamb or steak, again, you could add garlic powder and onion powder, or just one of the two. I prefer onion powder. It does get a bit clumped up if you leave it out or if you shake it over a steamy pot. So we've found what works best is having a plastic bag, little baggie of it in the drawer that seals with a Ziploc. We've tried having it in a jar on the counter and it still gets clumped up. So a glass jar of onion powder can work, but then it's best to use a spoon to scoop it out, like open it, unscrew it, and scoop it out. If you shake it over the steam, it's going to get very clumped very quickly. So onion powder, like garlic powder, is great for adding to any rub, any meat. If you're doing a pork rub, it's great in your nacho meat, your kind of spice mix for nachos or tacos. It's great to add to soup to add a little bit of oniony flavor, but you don't need to because you can just chop up an onion. So when possible, garlic and onion powder should be used in their fresh form. So fresh garlic, fresh onion is always better, and the powder would be a backup. It adds a savory flavor to soups, dressings, etc. Can be nice in a bit of salad dressing. And then your paprika or smoked paprika. That's also great to add to your seasoning mix for nachos or tacos, along with things like cumin and chili. Paprika is great on meat and vegetables. So if you want to make a red pepper and sweet potato soup, smoked paprika is amazing on that. If you want to make baked potatoes or chips in the oven, smoked paprika can be great, or a little bit of paprika. Chicken stews, it adds a kind of sweet flavor, and the smoked paprika a sweet and smoky flavor. So that's a great one to have in your kitchen. So black pepper, the garlic and onion powders, and the paprika. Then your warm spices, your earthy spices. So these are for hearty stews, hearty dishes. So there's cumin, there's coriander, there's turmeric, and there's cinnamon. So cumin is essential when you're cooking Mexican food, Middle Eastern like hummus, Indian cooking. We definitely use cumin in our homemade tortilla / taco nacho mix. And we use cumin on chickpeas or in hummus if we're making homemade hummus. So anything involving chickpeas, cumin goes great with that. Then coriander, we're talking the ground coriander, the seeds, not the leaves. You obviously get the herb coriander as well. And that brings like a citrusy warmth. And that actually goes great with cumin as well. So if you add cumin to something, you can add a little bit of coriander too. Then turmeric is a very earthy spice, often used in curries. It's that yellow powder that is supposed to be anti-inflammatory. It's used in rice or rice dishes, things like bobotie. It's used in soups, but especially in curries. That's great for that. And then cinnamon. So this is a very different spice to the others. It's got a sweetness to it and works well with sweet items. As you know, cinnamon on pancakes. You can put cinnamon in your oats in the morning, your oat porridge, on cinnamon rolls. All those things are delicious with cinnamon. And cinnamon's very good for lowering blood sugar, good for blood pressure, etc. So cinnamon is often used in baking, but it's also excellent in stews and Middle Eastern dishes. You can experiment. Then I would actually add a fifth spice to this warm and earthy category, and that would be nutmeg. We don't use it very often, but when we do, it is so perfect. It's a perfect match for mushrooms and for cheese sauces or cheese fondue. Those are the two times I use it. Nutmeg, you want to sprinkle very lightly on your mushrooms before you cook them with a bit of onion powder and salt, and that makes them really delicious. It brings out the flavor. And then in your cheese fondue or cheese sauce, just at the end to add that little bit of kick is so good. It brings like a warm, spicy flavor to the item you're adding it to. Then heat and bold flavor. Chili powder, it's a bit milder than cayenne pepper. It's great for chili con carne, for tacos. You use it in your Mexican spice mix. I'll put a recipe for a great Mexican spice mix at the bottom because I've mentioned it a few times. For nachos, tacos, enchiladas, etc., this spice mix is great to have in your pantry. So the chili powder adds that spice. You can add it to chicken, fish. You can add it to stews. You can add it sometimes to vegetables or soups, definitely. Just do it by taste, and that works great. Chili flakes, it's quicker heat, so it's dried chilies, but it's not ground up into powder. Works great to add to pasta, even on pizza, stir fries, even in your eggs, your scrambled eggs in the morning. And then cayenne pepper is very spicy, so you need to use it sparingly, but it works well to boost heat in your stews and soups. And then smoked paprika could go in this category because it is that deep smoky flavor that you can add to your meat. And as I said before, to your roasting vegetables, to soups, to your spice mix, etc. We use smoked paprika far more than actual paprika. It's just got such a great flavor. Then other bold flavored spices. Curry powder obviously is used for curries and lentil dishes, often in Indian food. Garam masala is also a warming Indian spice blend to be used at the end of cooking. Ground ginger would be used a lot in Asian cooking and in marinades. And then Chinese five spice is a sweet and savory, very aromatic spice, which is perfect for pork and stir fries. So those are all very helpful spices. And then herbs, the 4 herbs that I would use most often would be oregano, thyme, rosemary, and basil. So these are Mediterranean herb staples. Oregano I use the most often. We put it on everything. We put it on potatoes, potato chips. We put it on pizza, in tomato sauces, on meat like chicken for Greek dishes, lots of things. And thyme is great for meat. It's the number one spice you should add to all your meat dishes. I add it to leg of lamb. I add it to chicken, roast chicken, chicken in the oven. I add it to fish, soups, stews, everything. Just in moderation. What works really well is if you have fresh thyme, you can have a thyme plant, or you can buy a box of thyme from the grocery store, and then you add a few sticks of thyme on top of your meat, on top of your vegetables as you cook them, and it infuses a great flavor, and then you can just remove them afterwards. Or you can take your fingers and gently slide all the leaves off the thyme stem and leave those on your meat or on your vegetables. So thyme is amazing for bringing out the flavor of meat. Then rosemary is wonderful with potatoes, lamb, roasted vegetables. So roast potatoes can be great with salt, rosemary, and a bit of butter. Toss them in that. Sprinkle them at the rosemary on your roast lamb or chicken, and sometimes on roasted vegetables too. And then basil, the Italian herb, very much used in Italian cooking. Tomato sauces, pastas, bolognese sauce on top of pizza. So dried basil you would add at the beginning of the cooking process, and then fresh basil you can add onto pizza at the end, or in a pasta sauce, especially like bolognese with a tomato. It pairs very well with tomatoes. Garlic, basil, tomato, the 3 go together. They grow together great in your garden because they keep away the pests. The basil and the garlic is going to keep the pests off your tomatoes. But then they also work great together in cooking. So most pasta dishes are going to do great if you have a bit of tomato, a bit of basil, and a bit of garlic. So use basil as a way to enhance flavor at the end of cooking. You have your bolognese, you've cooked it up with its tomato sauce, and then a little bit of garlic and fresh basil at the end mixed into that sauce really elevates it. It's fabulous. So try to use dried and fresh basil in your kitchen. That's a great plant to have if you can. And then one more I can't forget is bay leaves. Bay leaves are fantastic to add to any dish that you're doing in the crock pot, or a meat on the stove like a bolognese. Putting a bay leaf or 2 in there is really going to enhance your flavor. So it does great to add bay leaves to any meat dish, and then to a broth or stock that you're cooking, add some bay leaves. Those are really a good kitchen staple, dried bay leaves. So if you taste your food, something you're cooking, and it tastes a little bit bland, whether it's a chicken or a bolognese dish or anything, these 5 spices would be the top ones to choose. Paprika or smoked paprika, garlic powder or onion powder, oregano, chili, and sometimes basil if it works. So those are the 5 you could start with in your kitchen: oregano, chili, garlic or onion powder. We use onion generally, paprika or smoked paprika, and basil. So have a look in your spice aisle, or we try to get the non-irradiated spices and herbs, organic herbs from the health food store. Go and have a look at the aisles that have spices and herbs in them and see what appeals to you. See what kind of cooking you're going to do and what you'd like to get. If you just do basic general meat like chicken and lamb, then what I've mentioned is great. If you do a lot of Chinese or Asian cooking, then maybe the Chinese 5-spice and the cumin, ginger, etc. If you do a lot of Mexican cooking, you can use the recipe below for the spice mix, and then you would use things like the smoked paprika and the chili. If you're British, you won't use a lot of spices at all, maybe some herbs. Do whatever works for your style of cooking and enjoy experimenting with the flavors. Start with your salt and then try smelling what you have, smelling your herbs and your spices, seeing how they seem to you and what you think would work with that dish, and then add a little and see how it enhances the flavor. It always comes by experimentation and practice. So I hope you have fun with spices and herbs, and I hope you get to grow some in your kitchen too. That's always a lovely aroma to have. You walk into your kitchen and you smell your thyme or your basil plant. It makes you want to cook. Thank you for listening today, and I'll see you next time. Have a great week.